Namaste. Welcome to Global Perspectives. Our guest for today's episode of Global Perspectives is Carmen Renee Berry. She is the co-founder of Berry Powell Press, a US-based publishing company. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been like 5 years since I've been here, so I'm really excited to be back on the show.
From being a New York Times bestselling author to starting your own publishing house, how has the journey been?
It's a very different role. When you're an author, you have editors working on your material. And now I am the one who is doing the editing and working on their material. And it's because I am an author, I know how it feels to be edited. And it can be very painful at times.
The name Berry Powell Press, I know that Berry is your last name, but can you tell us the story behind the name?
Yes, Powell is the name, my mother's name. And my grandfather, Earl Powell, back in the 40s and 50s, he bought his own printing press. And he wrote his own materials and he published them and then he distributed them. So he was one of the very first self-publishing authors. I wanted to acknowledge that and honor him for being in my heritage and I think giving me a love for books.
That's lovely. So a name that's connected to history.
Yes.
Wonderful. What is the core philosophy of Berry Powell Press that makes it unique from other publishing houses?
We are author-focused. Most publishing houses are established by editors or publishers who have never been in the author journey. So they don't know what it feels like to be an author. Whereas I show people how to be an author, and it's a personal transformation. You really change, hopefully for the good, through the process because you become more self-aware, you realize that your message matters, but you also have to have some humility. So we offer something very unique, that it's an author-based publishing house that helps people become authors. A second thing about Berry Powell Press is that we are very inclusive. We have authors from Japan, Switzerland, Kenya, Puerto Rico, even that is part of the United States, and Nepal. Besides, we have authors from America who are of different ethnic backgrounds. So we're very interested in having a wide conversation with different kinds of people.
And how do you ensure that inclusivity and diversity in their voices, in their writings?
Well, I'm the one who picks the projects. And I have a criteria that the person needs to meet. We have more people that come to us that we don't accept into the program. So they need to be able to have a really important message of transformation or hope. They need to be ready to become authors, and they need to be able to work in a group and collaboratively.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about an experience where your background as an author has helped you deal with a situation that has come up in your publishing house?
Many people come to publishing with ideas that they've made up, but publishing is very, very different than most people think. It is not a solitary experience. When I was publishing with traditional publishers, I had to make my editor happy, the acquisitions editor, the sales force, the marketing people, the publisher, the design group. Everybody worked together as a group. That's how I run my publishing house. That can be difficult because a lot of people want to put their message into the book, that this is my book. And what I have to explain to them is, if you publish your book, you and your mother are going to read it. That's it. Mm-hmm. But if you publish a book that is for the reader, readers will buy it. And that's a really hard transition for a lot of the authors I work with.
You just mentioned that working in a publishing house means working with a team, and it's nearly practically impossible to always keep everybody happy. So when there's a situation of a conflict or confusion, how do you move through it?
I very much encourage input. I don't want somebody to say after we published a book, I didn't think that was going to work, but I didn't say anything. I would much rather have people come in. And whenever possible, I try to reach a consensus so that the author, the staff member, and myself, we all agree. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And two people make the final decision. The author is in charge of the message and should never give up the message no matter what the publisher says. But I am the expert on publishing. And so if we have to, people have to defer to my judgment because I've been in this business for nearly 40 years.
How do you make sure that the concept of your author and you as a publishing house align? Like, is there anything that you do to make sure of that before you begin with the book?
Well, we have a team, so the first thing we do is we introduce them to the team. And when I'm actually doing the contract, I tell them that this is a collaboration. So I try to prepare them. We also have an author network where all of the authors can connect to each other. So they talk to each other and go, Carmen made me do this, or Carmen made me do that. And it lets them sort of work things out. I try not to be a strong authoritarian, but there are times when they think it's okay and it's not.
Is there any genre that's your priority?
No, we do children's books, we do nonfiction, self-help, memoirs, and then we do fiction. So right now we're pretty broad. The theme, though, is they are stories about redemption and people making a big change in their lives so that other people can read the book and be inspired.
In the past 2 years, Berry Powell Publishing has published 9 books, among which 5 have received awards, and some of them have even received multiple awards. And that's right. That's very amazing. Can you share with us some of your most memorable experiences during this time?
The most memorable for me was going to a banquet where they announced the winners at the Independent Publishers Association. And so we were there all excited because we knew we were nominated. And then when they announced our name, it was very exciting.
What made you think that the author-centric approach is the best approach to take in a publishing house?
I was ghostwriting for several years, and I would write a really good book, and then my author would go to a publishing house that was not very good, or was good but wouldn't help them. And so I got really tired of that because they were all disappointed. So I thought, I'm going to start a publishing house where they will stay with us and we will be doing promotion. We're just starting the promotion era. The first year we were like, what are we doing? The second year we were starting to publish, and now in the third year we have a podcast now, and we are starting to make our place in the market.
So you're just growing with more and more experience.
Yes.
Being an author yourself and guiding and mentoring so many different authors from different backgrounds, what are the few recommendations you would give to an aspiring writer?
First of all, whatever you think publishing is, you have it wrong. Because it's a very private industry, and they don't really tell the truth about quite a few things. And so be prepared to learn something new. Don't think you know it all. And then buck up when it's time for editing, because the editor's just trying to make your book better, not trying to make you feel bad. My very first book, I had to rewrite 39 times. None of my authors have had to go through that. They've maybe rewritten their book 5 times, but not 39 times. So I know what it feels like to be a new author and having a lot to learn.
Is there any time when the first draft of the book is like ready to go for publishing?
No. Now, the very first draft would not work. If you have edited it and you've gotten outside editing, then you could possibly let me look at the manuscript, and I would say, yes, this is ready. But most of the time, the author has written the book to themselves, which makes sense, right? You're writing a book in the way that your mind works. But really, you have to redo that book and say, what does the reader need to know from my experience? So it's a different thing.
If the author is writing from their own perspective and only their own perspective, then it's more of a journal than a book.
Much more. And even if you're doing a memoir, it is your story, but which episode in your life was really interesting to the reader? And it's very hard for an author when I say, this story is very interesting, but it doesn't make the book move forward. It doesn't move the story forward. And so that's really hard when I want to take something out that they think is, brilliant.
How do you think authors should strike a balance between what they want to convey and what the audience wants to hear from them?
Well, basically, a book is a product. It isn't about you. It's about being a product and making a product that people will want to buy. And once an author sees that difference, then it's a lot easier to make that change. Because I'm trying to convince a reader to buy my book because I'm solving their problem. You know, books are very interesting because every book solves a problem, and necessarily true for all products. But if a fiction or a romance, it's what you want to read on your vacation. So it solves the problem of what are you going to read on your vacation. If you need to grow tomatoes, then you buy a book that tells you how to grow tomatoes. If you don't want to think about your problems, you buy a book that helps you escape. So every book solves a problem, and the author needs to say, my book will solve your problem better than all of these other books.
Do you think anybody can become a writer?
Well, I don't, actually. I don't think anybody can be a writer. They can hire a ghostwriter, but we have creative processes in ourselves naturally. So I can't write a symphony because that's not my creative energy. I can paint a little, but I'll never be a great painter. If you're a writer, you naturally write. You write in your journal, you write notes, you're always writing something, because when you have an idea or an experience, it isn't real until you've put it on the page. That is the magic of an author. And the reason why, after all these millions of years of civilization, writing a book is so important to society. Every society has their historical papers. Every religion has their holy scriptures. And that is because writing down something important lasts forever. It's very important in the human psyche to have some writing that they hold as sacred. Nobody is going to say, oh, that's a sacred TikTok, or that's a sacred Facebook post, because those are things that are really quick and easy. But to be an author, you put the time in and you write a book. There's something special that happens there.
Do you think every book that starts reaches to a finish line?
No, heavens no. I think I've started many books that haven't been finished. So no, I don't think so.
What do you think are the reasons behind?
A lot of people don't know how to really end a book. They'll start writing, but they don't know when the book is finished. And that's why an editor is important to help you. There's a story arc that needs to be met. There's a lot of skill that needs to be learned. And so an editor who really knows what they're doing will help you finish the book, or decide if the book is even worth writing.
So why do you think it's difficult for an author to edit their own piece of writing?
Well, I think it's next to impossible. Because, and here's why, it's hard to get your thoughts on the page. And a lot of authors are intuitive. So they'll write a sentence, and in their mind, they'll make a leap, and then they'll write the next sentence. And they think that this makes sense.
So there's a gap.
There's a gap, but they never see it. So when I'm working with somebody, I say, oh, here's a leap, because they need to fill that in and make sure we know why they're coming to that conclusion.
As an editor, do you have a similar kind of problem? When you have gone through rounds of editing, you just stop seeing mistakes and you have to ask for help?
Absolutely. That's why all of our manuscripts, after the book coach finishes, after I finish, then we send it to readers who have never, ever seen the book before. Sometimes we hire people outside of the publishing house, and sometimes we do inside. But we always have fresh eyes before we go to publishing.
How do you keep up with the latest trends in terms of publishing?
I follow certain conversations. I don't follow all conversations. I follow conversations in children's books around children who are dealing with social issues. So that is my focus. It's not just, oh, I want to do a children's book series that is fun. I'm looking for that particular issue. We also have books that are religious in nature, and I follow those trends. So it depends on the book, but I don't follow all trends. I'm very focused.
Do you think that it's easy or difficult to write a children's book?
It's difficult. It's difficult to really write a book that communicates. We had a book called The Magical Closet Mysteries. We worked on it for probably 9 months, and then I gave it to the author and my book coach, and I said, okay, you finish it up and let me read it. And it was right before Christmas, and I sat down and I started reading it, and I thought, oh, this just doesn't work. It does not work. It's not the right story. And so I called her up and I said, we have to talk about this. We're going to have to start over. And she understood creativity because she's in the arts, in the theater, and she writes scripts. But she said, I need a break now because this is so upsetting. And I said, that's fine. So we waited a month or two till after Christmas and the holidays. And then we came back and we wrote a different plot. And that's a book that has won several awards.
What is creativity for you?
I'm glad you asked that because I think about it a lot. Creativity, I believe only God can make something out of nothing. So you have to have something to be creative. And you look at what you have and you rearrange what you have and you make something new. A lot of times when people are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, they see a goal way over there. And when they see that goal, they go, oh, I don't have what it takes to get there. But instead, if you go, what do I have? How can I make progress? And I rearrange this, I can move forward. And then I'm not feeling deprived for that goal. So that's what creativity is for me. What is your story? How can you rearrange your story so it is a good book? Or how can you figure out your solutions and rearrange those so it's a good book? So to me, creativity is focusing on what you have and then seeing how you can make something new out of that.
How do you keep yourself motivated?
I'm just energized by working with people. My favorite thing is working with somebody when we're really having a breakthrough and they can see, oh, this is going to make my book better. Yeah, I just love it.
What are your long-term aspirations for Berry Powell Press and how do you plan to achieve them?
My long-term quest is to replace myself. I want to train other people in what I know so that they can help other authors. And then I can add, what I am is called a developmental editor. And I need to have more developmental editors because I can only work with 10 books at a time. So if we want to publish more books, I need to replicate myself. Now, nobody can go through 40 years of publishing, but I have learned techniques and secrets that I can pass on. So I'm hoping that I will have other developmental editors and then I can eventually retire.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us today. It was lovely having you here.
Thank you so much.
South Asia Communications present Youth TV Show Season 14.